Hello, hello, and welcome to Decaf, a podcast by the Beacon Senator, Tennessee. Taylor and Mark joining you today. If you're listening and not watching, let me just explain what's going on right now. When I first started in a sorority, they told us, do not wear two items of Alabama clothing at the same time. Don't wear two items of sorority clothing at the same time. Mark is sitting here in a jazz hat with a jazz colored shirt and a jazz logo behind him. And he is he's just being his most authentic self, breaking all the rules, but just being Mark. I know
I'm sorry.
I hate on your fashion a lot, but come on.
Did you say jazz colored? I don't think that's a word. I think you just mean blue.
It's that navy blue. You're on
Yeah,
brand, okay? You're on brand. You've got the navy blue shirt, the jazz hat, the jazz logo. You're just vibing today, being your truest self. And honestly, when football season starts and I've got my Alabama hat and earrings and jacket and all the stuff on, I don't want to hear a word from you about that because I feel sure I will.
I want there to be a new color. I just hope jazz colored can be just a new definition that people, anytime they see a navy blue, they just call it jazz colored. I would love that.
Should I just like call Pantone and Crayola and all the people who are in charge of colors, Sherwin-Williams, and say your navy color is no longer navy, it's jazz colored.
I think that'd be perfect.
I think that's what I should do.
I got to give a shout out before we start this week. My one friend has listened to this forever, and he's like, "Can you give me a shout out?" So my friend Matt Uhrig, the landlord, as he's known on the basketball courts, who impressively, one of the things that he's done the best when he was in Nashville not that long ago, and he ate the hottest hot chicken possible. And somehow, I don't know how he did it, but he ate. It was kind of a challenge. Him and my other friend John, who he claims he's so good at hot food, he can eat all the hot food possible. He couldn't finish it, and Uhrig went and had 3 of the strips of the hottest ones. I had one taste of the bread that it was on, and I couldn't breathe for 15 minutes. And he ate 3 of them.
Are you serious?
He's a Nashville legend. Yeah, it was Party Foul's hottest one. I forget what the name of it is, but it was crazy, and I can't believe he did it.
Dude, even one bite of the mild chicken gives me heartburn for 2 days. I get mine with no hot at all. I'll eat Hattie B's, just regular tendies and ranch all day long, but I cannot even eat the mild chicken. So that is insane to me.
I know. I actually don't know how people do that, because Ron talks about that too. And I will say too, Uhrig is one of those people who says he can do stuff and then never does. He always acts like he's better at things than he is, and he's always terrible. And in fact,
Mark.
he lost to me at I never had run before. He lost to me at a 5K after he had been running for 2 years. I had never run before. It's for my dad's cancer thing. And I told him I'd beat him, and I did. It was insane. I ran in basketball sneakers.
Mark, he's our one big fan. You can't insult him on the podcast.
The point was that it was so impressive that he actually was able to do this, that he actually came through, and I could not believe it. We were talking, and he's talking before, he's like, I can't do this. I'm just talking trash. And then he did it, and he embarrassed my other friend John. So shout out to Uhrig. Thank you for being a listener. This is more of a compliment than it is an insult.
Shout out to Uhrig. You've done well, and you've proven to Mark that you can do what you say you can do.
Once out of 100 times. Once out of 100.
One time. Well, we'll hold on to that one time for dear life. So you might have seen in the news recently, we've been talking a lot at Beacon about innovation and entrepreneurship and trying out new innovations, because whether we like it or not, things are moving in the world with technology. There's been a lot of discussion about AI and what role it's going to play in society. But there's been a lot of controversy around self-driving cars, and they are about to hit the streets of Nashville. Robo-taxis are going to hit the streets of Nashville. There's a lot of mixed feelings about it. I personally have mixed feelings about it. I'll be curious to hear your thoughts, Mark, but I'll just kick it off with this. My one thought is, I love the idea of no one trying to talk to me. When an Uber driver talks to me, I'm like, please don't. This is a moment of silence for me, that I'm in the car. I can't work. I can't chat on the phone. No one can call me, whatever. Please don't talk to me. On the other hand, I just don't want the robots to take over. I don't know. I'm really conflicted. Mark, what are your thoughts about the self-driving cars?
Oh, I'm not conflicted at all. I love it. I think it's awesome. I have to be honest, though. I kind of saw... I kind of brought the story up, but I saw it on Twitter maybe 2 or 3 days ago, and almost all of the comments were people who did not like it. I think this whole idea people are scared of the health and safety or the safety of it. Like, I get that. As long as it's basically safe. I mean, and the idea is that there's drivers now who are unsafe. So this whole idea that, there's going to be accidents, there's accidents now. And truthfully,
That's
as
true.
long as the technology is good, there's going to be way less accidents because there's going to be all these, features that's going to stop in front of something where, I expect that in 5 or 10 years, we have self-driving cars, accidents are going to be cut by, 75, 80%. I really believe that. So I love it. I don't know. I'm assuming that they're ready. I don't think people are just trotting this car out because it's going to be such a bad PR disaster if, there's accidents.
If something terrible happens, yeah.
Yeah, and I would urge people to be really smart too and think about this. We always talk about this with gun violence and all this stuff. Like, yes, it's still a problem. One person dying is too much. But let's look at the bigger picture because I'm sure there will be an accident. There's certainly going to be some accident with the self-driving car. And let's not let one accident or something like that be like, oh, this is a bad idea. We need to ban it forever. It's an interesting concept. I'm really excited for it. I would take it day one. I expect that if they're on the roads that they've met certain safety criteria. I think, I don't know what's going on with the technology. It seems like it's ready or ready-ish. So it'll be interesting what happens. And I think that, if this works, and it will, I think we're probably 5, 10, maybe 15 years away from it being the norm for people, but it will be the greatest technological advance in our lifetimes.
No, I totally agree with you. I'm not saying I'm afraid of the self-driving car. My whole thing is, me and my anxiety. I look way down the road and I've watched way too many movies. And so I'm like, when the robots take over and we're all living in little like cocoons, like in the Matrix, and we're just like plugged in, that's my, and that could never happen. But that's obviously where my brain goes because I watch too many movies. No, I hate driving. I don't enjoy human interaction. And so the thought of just having a robo car drive me around sounds incredible. I love that. And, if you've ever been in a taxi in New York or even sometimes an Uber in Nashville, Blake and I were in an Uber recently and I saw my life flash before my eyes. I think that these self-driving cars will not take the risks that a lot of human drivers take because they'll be programmed not to. And a lot of human Uber drivers and Lyft drivers and taxi drivers do take those risks. So I really, I don't see a lot of downside. I'm kind of with you, Mark. I'm just, thinking in like the dystopian future of me watching way too many movies, which you never know. But
I think your point is well taken, though. I feel like it's more about, the same thing as any new technology. We have to watch what we're giving the government. Like, I don't want the government to have, know exactly where you are at every time and be able to, track you at all points. I think that there needs to be privacy with any new technology. I believe that's the case. Because, basically, the less the government is involved in, the better. And I think there's some real privacy concerns that you're making a good point on. But that's kind of, I think, when that happens, let's not have the government, like they always do, first of all, over-regulate, and then secondly, get personal information that they really shouldn't have access to.
I fully agree with you. I think it becomes a slippery slope when you start relying more and more on technology and less on human interaction, which I gotta say is kind of like my sweet spot of like being able to do things with technology and not having to interact with humans. But the government does like to stick its nose where it doesn't belong. So I think you're totally right about that. But I can't wait to take a ride in a self-driving taxi. Mark, maybe we can do a podcast from the self-driving taxi. That could be kind of cool.
That would be cool. I'm not sure that, I guess it'll be a smooth ride. We'll have to find somewhere to set up the computer, I guess. But other than that, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, the front seat will be totally open. So we can just, there's no need to see out the windshield. So we can just set our compuyer on the dashboard and do a podcast from a self-driving taxi.
Here's the question. In a self-driving taxi,
it.
Where do you sit? Do you sit in the back? I mean, like if you're in a self-driving taxi, you could sit in the driver's seat, you could sit in the front, or do you sit in the back? Like, what do you do?
I would have to sit in the back because I don't think I could be in the front seat of something like that where, I don't know. I think I would be freaked out. I think I'd be like trying to take responsibility and like default to like foot on the brakes. I don't know.
But I want to control like the radio and stuff. Like I want to make sure that I have access to like that it's a weird question.
That is a weird question.
I think probably the back is where most people would go, but it'll be, as we'll see as time. But I'm so excited. I hope that in 10 years I have a self-driving car. While I do like driving, I don't hate it. I mean, the idea that you could be like, oh, I'm going to drive 8 hours and sleep in the car, and that's fine. Or watch movies or whatever. Like if you're going down to Destin or something or 38, like what a fun trip that would be.
I know, Vanderpump for 8 hours while the car drives itself. Honestly, I am vibing to that. That's pretty legit. let's dramatically switch gears to the 2024 election prospects. We don't often talk about elections on this show, especially ones that haven't happened yet, haven't been decided, which is why you don't hear us talking about this week's Nashville elections as of now. But what we can talk about is speculation. And it is widely speculated in the Democratic Party that President Biden's going to get the boot and Gavin Newsom's going to slide in as the candidate. Now, again, let me just say, this is just for fun and entertainment purposes only. We don't have a dog in this fight. It's just interesting to see. We talked about it a couple weeks ago with Mitch McConnell's glitch, Dianne Feinstein's health concerns, the crazy things that President Biden says all the time. We've got people in office that have been there for a long time and might not be mentally able to serve. I mean, Biden's ratings are his approval ratings are way down. There's not a lot of trust in this. Now, would I trust Gavin Newsom more? Absolutely not. But apparently the Democratic Party officials, or at least Democratic commentators, are talking about it. I mean, it is the scuttlebutt, Mark.
Yeah, it was kind of talked about in like circles, kind of conspiracy theory stuff, 6-7 months ago, but it seems to really be picking up traction among, rank and file. Now, not that it's going to happen or not there's actually any plan to do it, but there's some weird stuff happening. I don't know if you saw this, but Gavin Newsom set up a debate with Ron DeSantis in a couple months, and he's going to debate Ron DeSantis, which is a weird move for a non-presidential candidate to go against somebody who's running for president.
Yes.
And you see, I think that the Democrats are starting to get nervous because, like you said, Biden's numbers keep going down and down. And, I think that they were probably pretty excited to, I think that obviously if you look at our poll, if you look at a lot of the polling, we don't know what's going to happen yet, but it seems like Trump is certainly the favorite to be the nominee. And I think that they were actually nervous that he could lose there. And, outside of whatever we feel like personally, Gavin Newsom is a much better candidate than Joe Biden. He's well-spoken. Sure. He's younger. I mean, I know it shouldn't matter, but he's a good-looking guy. He at least kind of goes in that he talks like a moderate. I don't think that he necessarily governs like one, but he does.
That's where my deep-rooted trust issues come from. But he does talk like a moderate. You're right.
And he has done some really good things, which I think a lot of Democrats have been scared of. He's gone on Fox News. Like he's basically going where the right is because, and it seems like all the moves he's making are weird for somebody who's not at least considering to run for president. And, I don't know how it's going to work. He's publicly endorsed Biden. So there's that. So I don't know if, there's behind, closed doors discussion with people urging Biden not to run. And they have him because he'd certainly do that. Or, it could just all be speculation. Really, Gavin Newsom set himself up for, a 2028 run, which is also possible. But there was politically, he's had a lot of, wins, and especially that, the recall election that the Republicans were really, they thought they could beat him, and he crushed it. I mean, it wasn't even close. He beat Larry Elder big. So he's had a lot of positive news recently, and, it's a really interesting thought because I think outside of, this is not my opinion, but just looking at polling, Joe Biden's a weak candidate. President Trump's a weak candidate. They're both weak candidates in terms of approval ratings. And, they're both underwater. More people disapprove than approve. And, outside of that, we're talking about potentially a Joe Manchin third party run, which has also been talked about. You never know. Part of this too is we're talking about this. This is all rumor. And a lot of times there's people who do this for a reason. Like, it could be Joe Manchin's PR team who wants to get him out there. It could be Gavin Newsom saying, hey, look how popular he is. And his team can have that, even if he has no plans on running. So you got to take everything with a grain of salt, but it would be really interesting. It would really shake up the presidential race because at this point, I think the Trump-Biden would be pretty close to a 50-50 toss-up if they went up in terms of odds. I would assume that Gavin Newsom would probably be at least a slight favorite if he were the nominee, based on kind of what I've seen polling wise.
Sometimes Mark and I talk about these things on the podcast just so that if they come true later on, we can have a we were right moment. I think this is one of those things. We love seeing on Twitter what's happening and what's going on, and we want to be the first to talk about it. But I will just say that if this does happen, I will not be surprised. I think that the Democratic Party as a whole, maybe not everyone, but the Democratic Party as a whole has lost faith in Joe Biden as their candidate in this next election. I think they see the writing on the wall, and if they want to win, they're looking at other options. Now, will President Biden not run? I don't know. That's a legacy thing. That might be an ego thing. That might be I'm already here. Why mess this up kind of thing. I don't know if he would step aside for a new candidate. We don't know, but a lot of interesting moves coming out of the Newsom camp. So keep an eye on it because it's hard to ignore.
And one more thing to note is that there is, I would bet money that Joe Biden's still the nominee. I don't think Newsom actually runs, but it's certainly possible, unless there's health issues, which is, again, like we said, Joe Biden, and he is, 80 plus. I mean,
he's no spring chicken.
No, but there's also an advantage in incumbency. I mean, there's a reason that not many incumbent presidents lose re-election. So in that way, he has that. And it's not, I don't think anybody, I think in the Democratic circles that are talking about this, I don't think they think that Biden can't win. I just think they view it as a toss-up, and they feel like any other candidate would be a favorite. So it'll be interesting. We'll keep an eye on it. And, if he announces our next Beacon poll will be coming out in October, so it'd be cool to be able to pull him in there where, on our poll, Biden was up, I think 66-8 on RFK Jr. So, I mean, he is, with the current field, it's hard to imagine him losing. But, if somebody else comes in that maybe has a little more name ID who can kind of unite that I want somebody other than Biden Democratic base, who knows? And it could be, it could easily be Gavin Newsom.
Things could be getting spicy. I was kind of looking at a maybe kind of boring election with just Biden versus Trump again, but things could be getting spicy. And honestly, for entertainment purposes, I kind of hope they do. Let's talk about the Women's World Cup. I am not a huge soccer watcher, but I'm a huge Instagrammer, and I see all of the stuff on Instagram all the time about the Women's World Cup. The team came in hot and kind of fizzled. Mark, what's going on in Women's World Cup world?
Yeah, I mean, and I've actually watched this more than usual. I mean, I've had a couple, I have a couple bets on it, but I've been watching it because I just think, even though I also hate soccer, I think it's awful. The World Cup's always fun to watch, but this has been, probably the most surprising World Cup probably in history. There's been a ton of upsets. There's the argument that Germany, which was, one of the top three favorites, they didn't even make it through to the final 16, where,
that's
you had some,
so crazy to me.
I know. And they were like minus 10,000 to make it. And Colombia actually won the group, and Morocco, who I think it's their first time ever in there, made it through the first time ever in the World Cup. And they're in the final 16. And
that's
it's
so
crazy.
Wild.
The U.S. team has not been. They've been really disappointing. They did make it through, but the Netherlands won their region, and they had to tie the last game. And if they would have lost that, they would have not made it through. And there's been a lot of commentators and people like that who have said, they were celebrating. Like, why are they celebrating? This is such a disappointing start. Now, granted, there's 16 teams left. They're one of them. But they were the favorite going into this. They're still actually up there. I think they're third. They're 4-1. But they got the second seed in their own region, and they have a really tough matchup against Sweden, where the world's number one team, U.S., plays the world's number 3 team, Sweden, which in the 16 you don't expect that to happen, but it's because the U.S. was so disappointing. So it's been a really, really interesting. There's been a lot of African countries which have never really done anything that have moved. South Africa moved on. Like, there's been a lot of really cool upsets that have happened in Italy. Some of these, these teams that are always good Italy and Germany have not moved on. So it's been really cool to watch. I know people who, watch a lot more soccer than me. It's hard to say how disappointing this U.S. team has been, because we remember this U.S. women's soccer team is dominated. Like
they're like royalty. Oh, they are treated like royalty over here. Yeah.
The last 8 or 12 years. And I know their whole argument about equal pay was we need equal pay with the men because we're winning. So if that's what they're going for, I don't know that their pay should go down a lot if they don't win this thing. And I mean, honestly, they're a slight favorite, but my guess is, and this will be a prediction because I think we'll know on Monday, is that Sweden upsets them in the round of 16 and moves on to the final 8. So that's my guess. Again, I'm not a soccer. People know way more about soccer than I do, but I have watched this, and I know the U.S. team has been really underwhelming. It's like, on top of not being cohesive, they don't seem to be playing with any passion. Like, they don't seem to care. I don't know what to say about that. And some of their players, Megan Rapinoe, and some of their players, like they're getting older and they're just not as good anymore. And then the young people have not maybe stepped up like they should have.
They're focused on those brand endorsement deals and not on the.
Well, they're not going to get many more of them. Yeah, if they lose here, they're not going to get the brand endorsement deals like they used to. Because I mean, that was one thing too. Because we always talk about how much, the world is soccer, and the U.S. is kind of looked down on in the world stage on soccer, except for women's soccer. And if that were to happen, if they were to lose in this round, that would be a colossal disappointment from the the favorite going into the tournament to being out in the round of 16 would not be a good look for them.
That'd be embarrassing. Maybe I'll turn it on a little bit. There are certain sports that are good nap sports for me. I am a nap queen. I love taking naps. And so golf, great nap sport. I watch Justin Thomas tee off and I pick him back up on the 16th hole. NASCAR, you watch him start, you come alive again on the last 10 laps. Tennis is not really a great nap sport because things change so quickly. But I feel like soccer would be a great nap sport for me. Like, that's good nap television to just turn it on. They do their thing. We watch them, kick off or whatever they do, and then come alive for the first, I don't know how many minutes are in a game. I know nothing
90,
here. All 90, I know is what I see on Instagram. Oh, then I could get a solid 75-minute nap in there and then wake up for the last 15 and see who wins and then have something to talk about. Act like I even know something.
I think your issue with that is that the games are on at 2 a.m. or 5 a.m. because it's in London. So I think it's going to be more while you're sleeping. Most of the games have been very, very early, where I actually kind of had, I have not slept well recently. So the last couple of days, I waking up at 5 a.m. Oh, this game's on. I'll put it on before I get ready for work. So, but it's I do love when stuff is on when nothing else is on. That's one of the cool things about the NCAA tournament when you have 11 a.m. games.
Sure.
I love that because every night there's baseball. Saturday, Sunday, there's football. But when you have those cool days where there's nothing else on, oh, awesome, I'll just turn this on. It's something background noise.
Anything between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. to me is qualified as the middle of the night. So I will not be, I need my sleep or I am an absolute swamp monster. So I will not be, I retract that. I'm just going to watch the highlights on YouTube so maybe I have something to talk about. Before we go, Mark and I have both been through crisis communications training. Okay, this is a little background on what we're about to get into. Mark and I have done the crisis communications training. We think we know how we would handle a scandal in our work life, in our personal life, whatever. There are so many people who are paid far and away more than many people in the United States who don't know how to handle a scandal. And we're going to talk about those right now because I will go on the record saying I love Lizzo's music. Nothing makes me feel sassier when I'm walking on the treadmill like a Lizzo song. So I was very sad this week to see that she is being sued for a hostile work environment and a number of other things. And I was even sadder to see her response to it. Okay, when bad news comes out about you, you don't just fire off an Instagram post saying that these people are she didn't say they're despicable, but man, she walked right up to that line without crossing it. I saw something on TikTok, and I'm going to get your thoughts in a second, Mark, but I saw something on TikTok of a PR professional. This woman is in her 60s. She's been doing PR forever. And she said, when you have something like this come out against you, you own it, you apologize for it, and you make an offer to make amends or do something like that. And she evaluated Lizzo's team's statement on these allegations, and they did none of those things. We don't have to get into all the allegations, but let me just say it was bad. It was really bad.
Gross.
Like so bad that an Instagram post doesn't cover it. And that's what she did. And she's not the first to make a huge PR blunder, but Mark, you're more of the comms and media guy. What was your gut reaction to this? And would you put it in a camp with anything else? Because I have another PR disaster I think I'd put it up next to, but you go first.
I do want to give, I don't like Lizzo's music. I don't really care for her much personally. I just don't like her. With that being said, it is all allegations. So it
is all allegations.
So, it's not proven. And, the way that she handled it PR wise, if it turns out to not be true, I'm okay with it. Now, part of the issue with this is that, this story has made its way all across the internet where a lot of times with stories like that, even if it's not true, people remember it happening. A lot of people kind of forget
the public opinion.
Yeah. And in 6 months, they found out, oh, this was all a lie. Now, with that being said, there's 3 different people and, it's it's hard to imagine there's not a little bit of truth to it.
Good.
Yeah. So I don't know if she did it. With that being said, her response was not something I would have done. I would have either, if I didn't do it, if I truly didn't do it, I would have, said this is all incorrect. These people, I wouldn't have gone after them personally the way she did. But I said,
she went after them.
Not true. And if it is true, or if it's true to some extent, you need to apologize. Say, you know what I did was wrong. I wasn't trying to make them feel there. I was whatever, and the part of the issue that we have in society and a lot of these companies is, A, they're either afraid to apologize about something and act like they did something wrong, or B, they apologize about everything. And it's like just saying, how many times do we have to hear somebody, this is my pet peeve, I hate. Somebody says something that other people consider offensive, right? A celebrity or something like that. And like,
sure.
It hurts so many people. I'm going to go to counseling, all this other stuff. It's like, shut up. You're not like, if you're going to own it. So first of all, if you're not sorry about it, don't apologize. That's rule one. I mean, I hate this idea that I apologize about everything. Like I will still to this day I'm mad at him. But when Mitt Romney said binders full of women about how he wanted, he should never have apologized for it just because the medium, he didn't say anything offensive. If you do say something offensive, you need to say, you know what, I was wrong. Don't act like going to counseling. If you say something racist, how is going to counseling going to help? Either A, because a lot of times they say, oh, I'm not racist. I said this one thing and it was either taken out of context or I was way young. I'm gonna go to counseling and so I know to deal with the people I hurt. It's one or the other. Either you said it 20 years ago, you don't feel that way anymore, or it was a joke or something like that, or you meant it, you're racist, and you need to go to counseling. Like, it doesn't make sense to have both. But it's always
you can't be both. It's so true.
But they always want to make
that way.
Yeah, they always want to make an excuse, and they always want to act like you said. But I think people are smart enough to know that's not real. The counseling thing's not real. You got caught saying something that you are unhappy you said, and you got to feel like you did that. Instead of just saying, you know what, if you're really sorry, give an honest apology. And if you're not sorry, don't give an apology. But we've seen brands, and the Bud Light thing was a terrible PR move.
The Bud Light thing was so bad.
But it's because they tried to. Here's the problem: you can't have it both ways. They tried to have their feet in both camps. They did this. They had this trans influencer, Dylan Mulvaney, and after this all came out, they kind of said like, oh, we're not going to throw, Dylan under the bus, and we're going to kind of stick by, but then not fully stick by them, kind of say, oh, we made mistakes. It's like, you need to say one thing or the other. You can't, and now everyone hates them. Trans people don't want to buy Bud Light, and people who support, trans whatever don't want to buy Bud Light. On the left, people on the right don't want to buy Bud Light because they did this campaign in the first place. And they're at this place where there's a reason they're like,
those of us who our brand is fratty are turned off because the marketing woman was like, we're trying to make Bud Light less fratty. And I'm like, but fratty culture is where I discovered Bud Light. Like, come on, don't do this to us. It was too bad. And they alienated everybody.
And she's not there anymore. But and it's like.
Exactly, but she alienated everybody.
I know. And you just need to basically say the point, like, look, and brands don't realize it. You're never going to win 100% of people over. Same with politicians. You have to basically be okay saying, you know what, there's going to be 10% of people don't like this, but, most people are reasonable. And if you give an actual heartfelt, honest apology, and what you did wasn't, some of the stuff Lizzo did, if that's actually true, it's going to be hard for her to give an apology for it because it's so bad.
It's so gross. Don't Google it, people. Just take our word for it. It's just gross.
It's borderline like sexual assault. I don't really know how that works.
No, I think that was part of the lawsuit was sexual harassment. I'm pretty sure that was part of it. But I, even if some of it's not true or all of it's not true or something, she could have at the very least said, if I have hurt anyone on I value my team. If I've hurt anyone on my team, I genuinely am sorry. And I want to talk it out with them. And I wish that it didn't have to go here. Something like that. Instead of just being shots fired. It was just not a good response. It was not graceful at all.
But I will disagree with you on this, that if she truly did nothing wrong, you shouldn't say that. Because I feel like that's another issue that people have. It's like, you have to say, no, they are not telling the truth. I did not do that, and I will prove it in court. Or, I will make sure if she did do it, I think you need a stronger message that be like, yeah, I was absolutely in the wrong. I wasn't thinking. I apologize to my staff. But now here's the issue, too. On top of just doing something wrong, like that's the Bud Light thing. It was just something where a group of people in America thought they did something wrong. There's nothing legal about it. But with an actual pending court case too, that changes how and what she can talk about, which I will kind of give her a little bit of leeway on that. But I think at some point, the best response is, if you didn't do it, listen, I don't have a comment on this. I know the truth will come out in court. That's what I would say.
Yes, I agree with that. Not just like firing at the people who filed the suit in the first place.
I don't think legally that's a good idea either. I think sometimes these people say these stuff and their lawyers are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to. Come on, you're making it so much harder for us right now.
You're making it hard for me. I know. I totally agree with that. So yeah, basically huge bummer about Lizzo on all fronts, but
she's always been the worst though. So I'm not really like, I can't stand her as a person.
Okay. That's fair. You and Suzanne can agree on that.
I
want to end, cool. Suzanne hates her. I want to end on a positive note because we just talked about some PR disasters, but we do have, there are cases where PR goes well. Mark has one that it was a actual disaster, but their PR team actually did a good job. So if you're ever faced with a crisis, copy the lead of
BP oil. After that big oil spill, they did basically everything right, and that was a catastrophic event.
It was a catastrophe. Yes,
people hated them, and they were able to turn around. They did everything right. They basically fixed the problem. They apologized. They made sure people got, like, it was just 101 in that. And ultimately, I think part of this thing is that it probably wasn't BP's team. There is crisis communications firms that do that. And a lot of the issues are these companies do these things and they don't reach out to a crisis communication firm until it's too late. Because guess what?
And they're like, oh, we'll just post something on Instagram. We'll just handle it. Like, no, you won't. There are people that you can pay to do this.
Or ignore it. A lot of people just ignore it. And like, there's times, you're not responding to something in 48 hours. If it's a real crisis, you're not responding, you look, cold-hearted, and you look like a brand that nobody wants to be associated with. So yeah, there's a lot of good examples. The problem is, in our line of work, we see a lot more bad examples of companies who have done these disastrous things. At some point, every company's going to have some PR issue, and we don't know.
Everybody does. You do.
And even
human error.
We've been very lucky. We have not had any kind of bad PR thing, really, ever.
Knock on wood.
But we have a crisis communication plan to deal with it if something ever were to happen. If somebody that.
Don't give examples. Don't.
Well, yeah. But you just never know. If some employee does something wrong, or some board member does something wrong, or we accidentally send the wrong email to the wrong reporter or something like that. Like, it's always good to have that, and it's I think that we're very lucky that, first of all, we don't do anything that really puts ourselves in that line of fire.
We're not that spicy.
No, yeah. And the stuff that it's hard, at least our current staff, I don't think we'd ever have to worry about it because we just have a really smart staff. And, I think we're all pretty good people. We don't say bad things even in our personal lives. So I think that
our personal lives.
Yeah. And our board and our leadership's all great. So I don't think we have to worry about that, but it's always good to be prepared.
But we do. It's always good to be prepared. And if Lizzo and Ben & Jerry's, which we won't even get into, and Bud Light, if any of those teach us anything, it's to check, double check before you post anything and be prepared with the plan, which we are. That's all we got for you today on Decaf. Thanks for listening. This has been a production of the Beacon Center of Tennessee. If you don't already, you should subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. Have a lovely weekend. We'll catch you next week.